Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for being patient with our start here. Wanted to pop on and introduce myself and kind of go through a little bit about what we're going to be doing and how it's going to look today. Um, so I am going to share my screen and see which one of these is sharing. Yeah, okay, cool. Hopefully y'all can see my screen. If not, send me a message in the chat or send me a question. If you can, hopefully that's funny because I laughed so hard when I saw that. So today, guys, we're going to be talking about 5 steps to automating your candidate pipeline. So what that really means is how are we looking at the entire recruiting workflow to build out a pipeline? How can we automate? Where can we automate? And why would you ultimately choose to automate a particular stage in the process? We're also going to look at some of the tooling involved and kind of how to use that tooling and how to implement that tooling. And I'm being told you can't see my deck, which is sad. So I'm going to share my screen again. Oh, that should probably be better now. I'm assuming that one works. So again, if you can't see it, send me a message in the chat. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that works. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I appreciate all of you. Cool. Yeah, so now you'll understand why I thought this was so funny versus my face, which is arguably also funny, just different type. So we're going to delve into this a little bit. Here's kind of the game plan. Y'all are in listen only mode, if you didn't know that. You can hear us, but we can't hear you. Or can we? No, we can't. So please, guys, ask questions. So I will stop at any point to answer questions. I'm not a big questions at the end person because then we got to backtrack and find the slide and go back through it. Just interrupt me, guys. I'm from New York. It's basically how we communicate: sarcasm, swearing, and interruptions. So use the question bar. Most of you have already found it, which I appreciate. And so we are live, guys. So definitely hashtag our daily on Twitter and tag me at Gotham Tech Talk, Gotham Tech Talk. And we are recording right now, so you will receive a copy of this at the end. But I will tell you there are certain things that won't make the recorded version at the end, so stay tuned for that. I may or may not be lying about that, but don't go anywhere. We want to give a quick thank you to our sponsors at Talview. Really interesting model they have for being an all-encompassing hiring, interviewing, assessing platform. If you guys haven't checked it out, definitely go to their site, give them a one through. They're worth the demo at the very least, just to understand what some of the more advanced companies are doing. And we should have this wrapped up by 3 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Central, 12 noon Pacific. That being said, I do have a tendency to go over a little bit, and I apologize for that in advance. So agenda for today, guys. I want to talk about customizing automation. So the ability to actually make automation seem more personal, right? Like one of the things we hear all the time about automation and AI is, candidate experience goes down and our brand doesn't get shared, et cetera, et cetera. I want to talk about kind of how to work through some of those problems and what that looks like. I want to go through the recruiting workflow itself and talk about like what works, what doesn't work. We're going to talk about tooling. As if anybody's seen me before, you know I literally love tools and I use a bunch, and I'm happy to share all of them with you guys. And we're going to look at how automation fits in the workflow, and within that, we're also going to talk about what steps you guys can take to automate your own workflow, or at least set up the process to look at automation within your workflow. So you can walk out of here and come to your particular tooling setup, process, team, and say, hey guys, let's take a look at this and kind of see how things are going. So we're going to kick things off. Again, interrupt me with questions at any point in time. So customized automation, right? everyone should have automation, right? It's exotic. And here's the thing, no, that's not true. Automation is a tool, right? Ultimately, it's a tool. You can say it's a process, but you're going to use a tool to do it. And automation isn't right for everybody, and automation all the time isn't right for most people. So when you're thinking, ooh, we should have automation, it's exotic, maybe just keep that in mind. If you don't get that, that's a Tiger King reference, and you should definitely watch that and be prepared to be super disappointed in humankind. So number one, you don't need automation. When people ask me, what's the best, AI sourcing tool or, assessments and interviewing tool, and they're waiting for an answer, right? They want to hear something like, Seek Out or Loxo or Talview or, Hone It. The answer is always the same. What's your use case? What problem is this solving? You're just looking to do automation, right? That's super cool. You could work in a car manufacturing plant too, right? Fixing the machines that automate the build, but they solve a particular problem. So talk to me about where your inefficiency is, right? Take a look at that piece before you decide whether you need automation or maybe your folks just need upskilling, right? Maybe it's just a process tweak. So first, just know you don't need it, right? It may help. So customized automation. I mentioned this previously, but what I wanted to go over is automation can be done, and it can be done in bulk, and it can be made to feel custom and unique to the person who's experiencing it. We do not have to sacrifice on candidate experience to implement automation. If automation is implemented hastily or to just get a thing done to make your life easier, you will sacrifice on candidate experience. So please understand that. If you're doing this the right way and for the right reasons, right, dealing with that inefficiency and bottlenecks and roadblocks, you don't have to sacrifice candidate experience. So let's kind of look at how we create that within each of these areas. So I'm not going to go live yet. I'll do that later and show you some of this. But within sourcing, right? People talk about AI sourcing and you're just basically getting a whole bunch of names kind of thrown at you, and it's just keyword matching and machine learning. Yes, to a point, but the machine learning and the sourcing is as good as the data you put in. So when you're thinking about, are you just kind of carpet bombing the market for people? Approach sourcing with a little bit more, I don't want to say tact because it sounds negative, with more of a strategy, right? So when I'm using some of my AI tools to do sourcing, I'm not just plugging in buzzword, right? Like, psychiatric technician and AAPT and certified or registered search. I'm plugging those in, and then I'm going to add something like went to one of these three colleges or used to work at one of these three companies, right? Because somebody at my client worked at one of those companies. So now what the AI is doing for you is weeding through and finding similar backgrounds with those certifications, but it's lining up the companies or the schools. So when you're reaching out to these folks, right, with the messaging, you're able to not sound as though you're saying, right, like, hey, I saw that you have a CDL license and I need someone with a CDL license. Would you like to job for me? Right? Like, there's more of a background to it, right? Like, hey, I went looking for people who graduated from XYZ University who had an AAPT certification or were registered as a psych tech somewhere. Saw your background, wanted to touch base with you, right? That type of sourcing leads to more custom messaging, which again, you can do in bulk, right? Does that mean sending 500 messages? No, that does not mean sending 500 messages. I'm going to reiterate that point because there's a double negative there. Do not send 500 messages out to people. That's a bad move, right? I cap out at 250 ever. My goal is 50 to 100 at a time. Why? I want to find common threads that I can reference when I'm reaching out to people and not saying, you have the skill set I need. I'm hiring for that. We should talk, right? I always want to make it something where it feels personal. And if you're using any type of messaging platform, except LinkedIn Recruiter because they're awful, you can actually use modifiers, right? So you can insert things like first name or company or title, and I'm going to go over this in more detail later, but understand you can send 100 messages out and have the people reading them say, oh, well, this person wrote to me, like just me. That is amazing. That same thing exists for chatbots. Craig Fisher actually gave a really good talk on this, I think last year maybe at HRTX Dallas. And the studies are in, guys. More often than not, I think the percentage is in like the 70s, but don't hold me to that. People either preferred or were ambivalent towards using chatbots, right? But how you use them matters. Is it in your voice, or is it just to get a job done for you? Is it literally an order taker, or are you implementing some type of personality into how it responds, right? And again, I can show you a little bit of that later. And then the last is screening. So for screening, I love automation as it relates to the submission part of screening, right? I hate doing write-ups. I think they're a waste of time because I frankly don't know most of the time what like the most important thing a data scientist is talking about when they're talking about like regression testing through like a Bayesian tree model. And I'm like, I don't even, it sounds like you're an agriculturalist, right? I don't even know what you're doing. So I'm a big fan of tools that can record your conversations, for example, or do live video interviewing, right? Like TalView, our sponsors, Hone It, another tool that does this really well. And these things I'm a huge fan of. I will tell you, asynchronous video interviews and coding exams and assessments, you have to be careful. So when I get an asynchronous video interview request, my immediate response is, cool, these guys just want to get like 100 people and just like look for the best people and just go that way. And they don't care about my time, right? Same thing with doing a Hacker Rank or a Hacker Earth, right? Any one of those coding challenges or any assessment. Where you put that in your recruiting process speaks to what you value. What do I mean? If you're going to have me do an assessment of any kind before you talk to me on the phone, what you're saying is your time is more valuable than mine. I don't want to work for a company who starts off on that premise, and I don't think you would either. So be mindful that things like that can actually come into play when creating these custom automation, unique automation, personalized automation approaches. So let's look at the recruiting workflow really quick. We have our intake call, pretty straightforward. We have our talent mapping, and sometimes the talent mapping piece is looped into sourcing. If you've got a really great sourcing team, they're going to do that and be able to not just show you, candidates who can do the job, but the entire potential audience that you could be reaching out to, and maybe some filters and breakdowns of those folks. That's going to go right into messaging into interview. So I normally call this a qualification call, but I'm agency side. So you guys, I assume interview is a universal term for recruiter phone screen. Then interesting, most people go right from here into submission. I go into putting this data into your ATS. That's super important. If you miss this step, you're basically, you're either risking that you're going to forget to put it in there, not put it in there correctly, or not put it in there at all, which honestly, that'd be a little bit of a lot. So from the ATS and data piece, this now is what we can automate, right? So think about that for 1 second. There were literally 6 things, and 5 of them can be automated. So are we automating these? Are we not? Why do we know that they can be automated? Let's continue going through the workflow, and then we'll come back and look at each one of these individually and talk about what it means to automate them, what tools are available, and what that looks like. So next, we have the sub. This is the submission. Why didn't I write it out? Because the space is too small and I didn't want to do a size 12 font for everybody. So submission, it's not a sandwich. Next, we're going to move into scheduling. So scheduling can sit throughout the entire process. When I think of scheduling with hiring managers, because I'm sure none of you guys have this problem because all of your hiring managers are awesome. But for everybody else, hiring managers are the #1 cause of interview process holdup, right? I just talked about this in the HRTX conference, actually. It's a very high percentage of managers are the main reason that there are issues in the interview process. Next, we move to an offer, and all of that will lead to candidate starts. But guys, here's what we can actually automate off this. Boom, right? Yeah, we can't automate giving an offer. Could we? Maybe. Should we? 100% not. You should never automate that. That is a human touch point. I'm assuming no one does this. If so, I'd love to know what type of tooling you use, honestly. I just haven't come across it. But that should be a phone call. And guys, you can actually automate most of this candidate experience, right? You don't have to lose this to create efficiencies. So I'm going to stop for 2 seconds and see if there are any questions. No questions. Nobody has any questions so far. Okay. Touche, everybody. Let's jump into the favorite part, or at least my favorite part. So I'm going to go through these 5 different categories, and then I'm going to show you them live. I think it's important that you see what the automation piece actually is within each of these tools. I think we use AI and automation a ton without necessarily understanding, yeah, but where within this is that happening, right? So AI sourcing, that's typically going to happen when you put in requirements and pluses and all your filters, and the software itself, right? Seek Out, Hire Tool, Amazing Hiring, Loxo Source are all going to go and pull back candidates based on that. You can yay or nay them, right? Thumbs up, thumbs down, and then it will go back and look for more candidates. That is the AI portion of these tools. I will tell you that Seek Out, Amazing Hiring, and Loxo do that and also offer you the ability to not have to do AI sourcing, and you can actually search through it similarly to how you would on that platform that shall not be named that everyone uses, but with much more detail. It was LinkedIn, if you're not sure. Next, we have outreach. So here are my favorite outreach tools. I'm going to take a pause. I see questions. One question, when you talk about offers not being automated, do you mean the offer extension to the candidate or creating/signing the offer? Great question. I mean extending the offer actually to the candidate. And saying, hey, we want to offer you the job. Here's what we want to offer you. We're super excited. Here's all the details, blah, blah, blah. You should 100% use like DocuSign or HelloSign or an internal HR tool to get the document signed. I don't know what would happen if, as a recruiter, I got a job offer for something and they said, great, what's your mailing address so we can mail you the offer letter? We just need you to sign it and send it back. I'd probably ask for their fax number and then laugh and hope that they're joking. So no, that's a great question. You do not need to do the actual signing and everything in person. But I think the extension and the excitement of saying, hey, we want to offer you, we want you to come on board, you're a member of the team, is super important to not lose to any type of automation. Cool. So outreach. So there's 3 different types of outreach that can be automated. One is email. One is the type of messaging that's done on the platform that shall not be named. And the other is text messaging. So I will tell you, I will show you these directly. I recently discovered Lemlist, an email automation tool that I am just like crazy in love with. There's another one called Simple Texting that I will show you that is text message campaign automation, and it's super inexpensive. And then I'm actually going to show you Loxo for this because they have the most unique ability to outreach across all 3 of those automated, right? So email, text message and the LinkedIn email within a workflow and a process. So I will show you guys those as we get through and place this tooling within the process and within the workflow. Interviews. So I talked to you about this, about my concerns around automation here. That doesn't mean that automation tools aren't the right choice for this stage, right? So yes, they are our host. That's not why I'm showing them. They know that we do not demo their products and everything. So please understand, I'm showing them as Batman, not as like Recruiting Daily free podcast. What I will tell you, their chatbot is pretty interesting. It does enable their system to like score resumes based on recruiter inputs, right? And it automates live interview scheduling. So if you're thinking like, oh, like XAI or Calendly, no, it actually automates the scheduling with people like managers and the candidate and getting, the prerequisite people together and following up and making sure it gets on the calendar. Honeit is another super interesting tool for qualification calls that records the phone call and enables you to create sound bites. And then Human Intelligence actually does assessments like personality assessments, team comparisons, etc., which TalView also does as well. I've used Human Intelligence a little more in the past, so I'm a little more familiar. And then we have the chatbot. So chatbots, if you're not familiar, go to literally any retail site, but if you're not doing that right now because you're watching me, thank you. Chatbots are basically a programmed bot, right? Like a chat, think of Facebook chat or an instant messenger that you can program to answer certain questions and ask certain questions based on the candidate's response. You can use triggers, buzzwords, keywords, or natural language processing to have the chatbot continue the conversation, answer the question, etc. Can be very useful, can be very dangerous, right? So I'm gonna show you guys one that I use and the ways that I set it up very poorly, right? So I'm gonna give you an actual bad example of what not to do and explain to you why. And finally, we have the ATS. I don't know if that little bar is covering it for you. It says ATS. Here, I think, are the three big ones, and I think most industry-changing ones. No, they're not the enterprise, right? It's not iSIMS. It's definitely not Workday, right? It's not Bullhorn. These, I think, are the more progressive and kind of shaping the way things are moving forward in the ATS world. So here are the ones that I currently use and that I can actually share with you guys a little bit of background on and show you. And I will go through that during the workflow process, which we're going to get into now. Before I get into actually showing these tools, any questions, comments, concerns, any tools that people think are totally awesome that I didn't name here, or any of these tools that people use that they're like, look. Can you meet Alfred? He looks a little busy back there. If he frees up, I think they're working on something, looking at multiple pictures of the same exact person in different profiles, which is super important. Any other questions? Great. Do you use any web scrapers? Gentry, I sure do. So I will tell you, I use ZapInfo. I love ZapInfo. I'm an evangelist. I'm a power user. I love them and everything they do. I am also working on something myself on the side to do something a little bit different on the scraping side, and I'm not going to share what yet, but it's in the works personally. Someone shared, I like using Trinsley for email. Yeah, I will. So I've used Trinsley, I've used Mixmax. I will show you Lemlist or Interseller as to why I prefer these over Trinsley and Mixmax. Question, are all of these paid tools? Yes, yes, yes. Loxo actually offers unlimited free personal contact information lookups. Otherwise, yes. Lemlist is yes, super inexpensive. Interseller, yes. Resource, yes. Gem, yes. Simple texting is super duper cheap. Yes, yes, yes. Zor, yes. So yeah, that would be a yes. Yes, they are. Next question, what are biggest benefits and danger zones of chatbots? I'll cover that with you. I'm going to show you what the danger zone looks like. I am still using Taleo, not a big fan. Yeah, I don't blame you. Better than Workday. Next question, do you use Google Chrome extensions for automating any of these workflows? I sure do. I live on Google Chrome extensions, which you will see once I close out of this. I've actually started exploring with Edge a little bit, which I know if you're like, oh, Internet Explorer, it's not. It's Microsoft and Google together, so you can get all your extensions, and it doesn't have quite the memory suck that Chrome does. I've been pretty impressed so far, actually. Do some of these integrate easily with each other? Oh man, I wish I could be like, yeah, awesome. The short answer is not great. Part of the tool that I mentioned I'm working on is going to help with that. But as of right now, honestly, one of the best ways to interact is downloading to a CSV and then loading in. Some of these do interact with your ATS to kind of directly load in there. One of the advantages of Loxo, you see it on here 3 times for a reason. You can source, find contact info, do your outreach automation, and it's a really, really solid ATS. So it is an all-in-one if that's kind of what you're looking for there. Another question, what is the cost to have tools for every avenue? Connect with me personally afterwards and I can go through with you. It's going to depend on your use case, what tools, what your workflow really looks like, where your deficiencies are, etc. Which Google Chrome extension can you recommend? Depends on what problem you're trying to solve. Again, reach out to me afterwards. I'll give you a list of everything I'm using. And last question before I go forward, Eightfold AI. Any experience myself or know someone who has in the middle of an implementation as we speak on top of Taleo. I have spoken to those guys before. One of my buddies, Todd Raphael, actually joined them from ERE. They're doing some really interesting work. The downside is I'm a smaller agency, so I don't have like this huge ATS for this AI to process all the data on to make these recommendations. The companies I have talked to who have played with it seem pretty impressed. So I'm sorry, I just don't have enough data to speak to that for you. I'm going to come back to the rest of the questions. I know we have another 1 or 2 coming through, but I want to get to show you some of these. Hopefully it'll answer them. And then if not, I will continue to go back and answer. So let's automate. This is what can be automated in your process. Again, sub is submission, not a sandwich. So first step, intake call and source. That's not intake call. That should definitely be market talent mapping. You cannot automate the intake call. So I'm going to do this because I have OCD and I literally can't handle it. Sorry. Yeah, that's literally, is this happening live right now? Yeah, it's literally happening live right now. Oh, look, sourcing. That's perfect. That's what we're doing. So here's 4 tooling examples. They're not the only ones. They're the ones that I use the most regularly. I'm going to show you a couple of them just to kind of show you what the actual automation pieces look like. So first one, and this is one of my go-tos, is Seekout. So when you initially log on to Seekout, it doesn't really look like there's automation, right? You're typing in your search, et cetera, et cetera. They have a new UI coming out, which I promised I wouldn't share yet. But for now, when you actually go to their robot and, you call this, RD webinar of awesomeness, right? It's a project. And maybe we put a company in here, New York Times, because they're a client. I know I can do this. Software engineer, boom, and New York, right? Great. So now check this out. You paste your job description here if you want to. Otherwise, this is point and click, right? So these titles look great. Not a test engineer. Lead, blah, blah, blah. Click however many you want, right? Whatever works. And then let's go into your skills. So I want Python and Node are required, and it would be super cool if they didn't have any of those tools. I don't know, Golang? Yeah, go. Cool, years of experience, et cetera, right? So you plug in all your details. It does have more filters as well, so you can do things like diversity and company or add any of the filters, right? For argument's sake, we're just gonna go through and click next. So watch this. This is where some of the AI, I'm using that term super loosely. This is machine learning. This is where some of it comes in. And as you remember, the up and down, right? So we're just going to assume, hey, this person looks great. This person does not. This person looks great. This person does not. Person looks great. Cool. And then get more recommendations. So this is where the machine learning really comes into play. So it's going to take those yeses and nos, and it's going to actually return back to you people based on the commonalities of the yeses and then excluding the commonalities of the nos. And you're going to just keep going through this process, right? This is what sourcing now becomes using automation, right? Accept, don't accept, go down through again. And then when you get to the bottom, right, you've gone yes, no for everybody, get more recommendations again, and it adds all of them into the project itself. So that way you can go afterwards and complete all your messaging, etc. So that's this tool. Amazing Hiring is a really great AI tool, particularly in the tech space. So for AI sourcing, I can literally just go data science and type in New York, boom, and it'll do the search for me. And this is where you can add in, the years of experience and diversity filters, et cetera, et cetera. And you can even put in more inclusions, exclusions up here as you go. But the more that you add people into projects and go down through these, the more and more focused they become. It actually returns some really great results, and their email findings just awesome, right? So that is generally how AI sourcing works. I don't think we have any AI sourcing. Nope. I'll answer two questions quick. Is there a Clipper tool that you're aware of that can bulk extract LinkedIn profiles into a CRM for outreach? Yes. It's mostly automated. So Zap Info does that. It'll zap the LinkedIn profiles for you. Scrape and extract. You extract it into a CSV and then just load the CSV into a CRM. Almost every CRM and ATS takes those files, and you just map the fields as to where they go. How can we store data in an ATS? That is too long of a question to answer here. Your ATS should 100% have the ability to add fields and to create custom answers using things like notes and stages, etc. Reach out to me after this. Happy to connect with you on that also. And what about Python scraping? Not worth the time since tools are readily available. For whoever asked that, I'd reach out to Erin Matthew. She is a world-class sourcer who actually is learning Python on the side. She'd be a great person to ask. Someone asked, I haven't scraped before. How do I do this? I have 2 seconds. I have the extension open. Cool. So let's go like this. Let's go, boom. Great. So you're on a profile. This is how to scrape. You can scrape an individual profile, literally zap info, zap in, extract from page, and it's just literally does it all on its own, pulls all of the data for you. So when you look at the record, everything's in here that it can pull back, right? Years of company, etc. Or you can do it from a search itself. Erin's last name is Matthew, M-A-T-H-E-W. Single T, no S, right? You can also do this from a search page. You can also scrape from here by doing the exact same thing. Zap in, extract, and it'll go and grab each profile. So hopefully that helped. And Nikeo doesn't mind that I just shared all of his data online. So fantastic. Great. Is GDPR in Europe preventing automation on contact messaging? It is hurting the efficiency of it, but I'm not a lawyer, so please, I'm not a lawyer. Don't take my advice on this. I'm telling you my understanding of this thing. I'm not a lawyer. Definitely not a lawyer. My understanding is that you can collect the data on their personal contact information. You have to ask before you use it, and you can only hold it for 30 days, and then you have to get rid of it. You cannot retain the data. Again, do not take my word for this. I am of zero professional qualification to give you that advice. Messaging, this is literally my favorite. if you've seen any of my other webinars, you know I totally geek out on messaging and customizing messaging so that you can reach out to a bunch of people, but make it sound super customized. So I'm going to show you Lemlist. If I have time, I'll show you Interseller. I'm going to show you simple texting, and I'm just going to quickly show you Loxo's 3-prong capability. It's silly how cool it is. So let's start with Lemlist. It is literally an email automation tool. So what does that mean? That means that you set up a series of emails, right? So you're going to set up, the step is configured. That's a joke. Yeah, okay. So you can set up steps. So it'll send this email, and then one day after that email, it'll send this email, and then this. So until the candidate replies, it will send as many messages in whatever cadence you want to that candidate. So your first question, the first thing you probably thought of is, oh my gosh, that's going to get really annoying for that candidate. Yes, if you write crappy messages, it's going to get really annoying. That's true. If you are clever about your messaging, it will not get annoying. You'll also notice I send all of mine in a pretty short period of time. If you're thinking, oh my gosh, people are going to say, oh, aren't you being persistent? No. If my messaging doesn't catch their attention, they're just going to delete it. They're not going to notice when a second one comes through the next day because it was crappy messaging. Otherwise, they'd have responded, right? So here's some important things to have in your messaging. And I'm going to show you why I love this tool in particular. Like I just think it's so cool. So company name and first name are super important. So why does this matter? Because when you reach out to someone, they'll be able to detect whether it's a spam message or not, right? So you're like, if you reached out to me, right, and you just copied my first name in and didn't actually look at what you were putting in there as the first name column and said, hey, Mike Batman, I'm going into this email assuming that this is stupid spam, right? If you say, hey, Mike Batman, how are things going at Wayne Technologies, Inc.? I'm like, this is definitely a spam message. So you want the ability to do this, but you really need the ability to clean these up. So before we put these in, what you'll notice, we actually clean up all the names, right? So you'll see, we don't type in, how are things at Price Waterhouse Cooper? Like, come on, meow. That's not going to fly for anybody. A bunch of these had much longer names, or we shortened it here. And you'll see their first names. If you compare them to their emails, we're using the first name that's in their email. Why? Because that's what they go by, right? If you reached out to me and said, hey, Michael, how are things going? I'm immediately like, you're not my mom, you're not my grandma, you're not my sister, you're not my wife. So like, no idea why you're calling me Michael, right? I don't go by that. So super important. Use these because it sounds very custom for the person, and also clean them so you don't sound like a dodo. The one thing I will tell you that about Lemlist that no other tool does that I geek out about, check this out, guys. I'm going to make this a little bigger here. You can put these custom modifiers into an image. So when you receive this email, it literally looks like a plane ticket with your last name, comma, first name written in this style. And on this desk, if you can't see it, it literally would say your first name in this placard on the desk. Talk about somebody who would open this email. There's no way that you're assuming that this is not custom sent just for you, right? Someone puts my last name and first name embedded on an image, I'm like, oh, that's amazing. I'm responding to you no matter what. So things like this have a ton of value. Questions, any issue with formatting in Lemlist? No, I haven't seen anything so far. You have to be careful with letters that have accents over them. Some tools do, some tools don't. I haven't actually tested Lemlist for that yet, but they are a French company. I have to assume that they're set up in a way to handle those. What if the candidate already replied to your email? Will the system automatically exclude these candidates? Yes. The second they reply, it marks them, as you can see here, it actually marks them as replied. and changes their status and lets you know how many replied at which stage and when they replied, et cetera, et cetera. What's your recommendation on number of sequences at which point to stop? 5 is my go-to. As you'll see, I always A/B test the first email, and then I go to 5. And my 5th email is always a picture of my dogs because I love them and they're super cute. I haven't heard anybody tell me differently yet, and people seem to love them, and it gets people to reply. What are my thoughts on Gem? Lemlist looks cool. We'll check it out. So Gem is interesting. It's definitely becoming more of a CRM, which I have no interest in. And the UI, just for me in my own personal use, wasn't my all-time favorite to go through. So that's just my own personal piece. I think we have. I've had trouble before with emails with images going into spam. Does Lemlist avoid the spam filters with photos? Yes. So they have, again, another unique feature. They have something called Lemwarm, which you'll see here. So super cool. Ready for this? It will literally send this many emails out behind the scenes to other Lemwarm subscribers, and behind the scenes will have them open and respond to the email. If the email goes into spam, it will remove it, mark it not as spam, and respond. So it actually increases your IP and domain reputation. If you don't monitor your IP and domain reputation, understand things like bounced emails, emails marked as spam, people unsubscribing, all of that adds negative marks to your IP domain or your IP rep and your domain rep. And the lower it goes, the more likely you are to go directly into a spam box. Price for Lemlist, you'll have to look it up online, or you can reach out to me and I'll make a referral. If it comes from me, they don't have to pay a salesperson, so they typically give a little discount. Thoughts on Gem? Do they have email templates? Yes, and you can create email templates, which are great. How do I track deliverability rates for these outreach platforms? So what I just went over, they actually have email health and email tests. So they'll actually be able to kind of tell you the efficacy of all of them. How do you utilize sending the emails through Outlook? It works the exact same way. You hook your Outlook. This is actually an Outlook account right here. It just syncs up and you send it through. Some companies, you may have to go to your IT admin and have them set it up. I did for this one. They're a client, and I operate on all my clients' email addresses for branding. And so I had to have them like get me entry to this, but it's normally pretty easy unless you're government or like super hardcore financial services. Sweet dogs, what are their names? That is not a diversion. That is an excellent question. Their names are Honey and Blue. Honey is the brown one, Blue is the bluish one. What do I use to monitor IP reputation deliverability? So I've been using Lemwarm. Prior to that, there's one called MX Tools. That's pretty decent. And I use Zero Bounce to check all of my emails to make sure they don't bounce. Again, guys, you don't need to remember all these tools. You don't need to try to check every one of them out. Just email me after this. We'll set up a time just to chat really quick. It's not a paid service. Just pop on a Zoom like a normal human, and we'll just chat really quick. I'll give you, 20, 30 minutes and go through some tooling with you and see what you guys may need. How do I import data into Lemlist? CSV. I download a CSV file and I load it right in. Cool. Alrighty, great. I'm gonna jump back in. That was a cool detour. I liked it. Thanks, guys. I have a good time with that. Next, I'm gonna show you guys simple texting. So I will tell you, this is unfathomably inexpensive. So here you can literally create text message campaigns. You can send media. You have your custom fields for first name, right? And you always set an unsubscribe message, and then boom, send to my first list, whatever it is. Great. And then type out message. Great. And then go to the next one, right? Boom. Send now, delay the message, whatever you guys want to do. And you can just keep setting up multiple to send out. Again, I can't express to you how inexpensive this is. It's literally like 3 cups of Starbucks a month to do this with a whole bunch of sending. So worth checking out again. And then there's Loxo, which I already mentioned to you guys, super interesting. So for one of these tools, you can literally add a stage. And when you're adding the stage, check this out: email, text message. You can make phone calls through their system. So automate that so it would pop up and dial the call for you, or send a LinkedIn in-mail message. And so you can create that same type of pattern that you would in Lemlist, but use all of these different platforms to reach out to people. So I hope that helped and gave some clarity. I know it took a bunch of time, and I apologize a little bit. I'm going to keep going. Interview and submission. I'm not going to go too far into this. I will tell you, for these two, they automate the actual interview process. I talked a little bit about what TalView does. Honet's the one that records the call and makes sound bites. So your submission's actually just a URL with sound bites of the candidate answering your questions. Super cool. Human Intelligence and also TalView do assessments. So it should be pretty simple to use when you're using tools to be able to go in, pick someone, and then really easily invite to an assessment, schedule a live session with, go in to their actual profile themselves. Yeah, I know something went wrong. I'm sorry, computer, I have a lot going. I'm not going to go back in, but you guys get the idea of ease of use, the ability to send people different invites and different assessments, and able to kind of analyze that. And you should be able to submit to your hiring manager using any of these, right? Just depends on what you want your submission to look like and what pieces you want to automate. Again, happy to show you guys any of that stuff offline. Well, I mean online, just not off this whatever. ATS, I showed you Loxo already. The automation pieces, though, super important to understand this, guys. So when you have roles in here and you have your different stages, this is one of the most important things I've found. When people are in your different stages, you should be able to really easily drag and drop to a different stage, right? Haven't added anyone to this yet. But when you drop them into a new stage, you should be able to set automations. Literally like, oh, hey, candidates rejected, it should auto send them an email that uses their first name and their company and whatever else you can use. So it sounds super custom when you're sending it. And that way you're reducing the possibility that you're going to forget to update any notes, or that the candidate's going to get black holed, which we all know is something that definitely happens. Best way to reach out for referral to Lemlist, shoot me an email. My email address will be up at the very end of this. Or I think, there we go. I just sent you my email also in here. I'm not sure if everybody got it, but if not, it'll be at the end. Yes, Lemlist does integrate with Gmail, and recently started using Loxo. Why choose Lemlist over Loxo's capabilities? It's a few extra bells and whistles. Also, the way that we work at Wayne Tech is very, very different. So we only use an ATS for retained searches and contingent searches. Most of our work is just sourcing on the upfront, building lists and doing messaging. And so it helps to operate not within an ATS to do that. Again, connect with me offline. I'll show you what we do. It'll make total sense to you. If you have Loxo, do you need Lemlist? Do you need Amazing Hiring and Seek Out? No, you don't. It'll do all of them. Which is better, Loxo or Workable? Loxo. That was easy. That was the easiest question I've gotten. Scheduling, guys, I'm not going to spend any time on this. If you are not using a scheduling tool, go get one right now, as long as your IT department lets you integrate. They're free, right? I suggest X.AI, but other ones are BookMe, Calendly. It enables you to just send a link to someone so they can book time on your calendar without going back and forth. Super straightforward, super easy. XAI just released team calendars also. So like if you have a panel that gets done, you can set up a team calendar for that, send a candidate a link, and it'll find the times when everyone's available. So there's no back and forth. It's free. Just go download it. Great, popping back in again. So looking at the automation in action, talent mapping. Remember, that was supposed to be where intake call was, sorry. So you here can implement some, AI in air quotes, sourcing tools. to help you work through this and just generate a little bit more, a few more candidate leads in less time. Messaging, this is probably the #1 place where I suggest getting automation. It's one of the hardest things to do on your own. Interviewing, important depending on what your use case is. ATS data, super important because this should be where all your data sits. So the more things you can automate about the data, the better it will be. Again, I want you to look at all of these. You do not need automation for any of these. You can search LinkedIn regular, you can Google X-ray search, you can just send messages with Gmail and Outlook, you can do a phone interview or a Zoom interview, you can literally use Trello boards and Excel files if you wanted to, right? You don't need it. They solve problems of efficiency, that's it. Do you need XAI for scheduling if you have Loxo? I like it because it helps with things that maybe aren't just candidates. So if I want to schedule something with like my teammates and things like that, it helps. I also use it, if I want to have a chat with like one of you guys, if you reach out, I'll send you a link to go do that. I wouldn't want to have to add you to my ATS. I'll come back to some more questions. Submission, you can automate that, right? With one of those interviewing tools. Scheduling, please just go do this, right? You're not sacrificing that candidate experience. You don't have to. So DIY automation, how do you do it? 5 steps. #1, most important, understand and write out your workflow. I can't stress this enough. I've spoken about this at the last 2 conferences I've spoken at. So apologies if you were attending those. I'm a broken record about this because it's so important. Guys, write out your actual workflow all the way through and try to do it in a way that's independent of your tooling, right? So you can do one based on, hey, we have to do this because this is what the tooling does. Here's what we should be doing or what I'd like to do. Within that process, namely the one that involves your personal tooling, find out where your bottlenecks are as it compares to your ideal process and workflow. It's going to be pretty obvious. There are going to be things you just can't do or that take a ton of time in order to do it the quote unquote right way. Next, explore whether it's tooling or processes. Remember, you don't need automation. There are times where it's just a process issue. If you just change the way you did something, just slightly even, it may solve any problems of inefficiencies, right? So look at that. Don't immediately go for a silver bullet that'll solve your problem with a click of a button. Look first as whether there's something we can change to make this better, even if it's upskilling employees. Next, pilot your tool for efficiency and optimization. Guys, this is an open invite for everybody here. If you're looking at new tooling, come talk to me first. It's very hard to pilot tools because in order to actually get a good view of how well they'll work for you versus others, you'd have to pilot multiple tools at the same time and do the exact same work on all of the tools. It's a complete waste of time. I've done that already, so like, make use of me, reach out to me. I'm happy to go over that with you. But when you do pilot the tool, the goal is to compare your efficiency and the optimization of your process to when you didn't have the tool. And the only way that that works is with adoption, right? The #1 reason that tools, quote unquote, do not work is because of adoption, not the tool. Right? I've heard from so many people, right? Like Seekout didn't really work for us, or ZapInfo doesn't really work for us, or whatever it is. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I promise you, because it works for trying to think of the type of roles I filled and where, right? Globally, from administrative assistants to board of directors to lawn services technicians, we'll call them. It works. But you have to understand how to use it, and it has to be something that you are invested in and bought into. So I can't stress that 5th piece enough. If you do not have that, the rest of the work you do is meaningless. It will look like the tools don't work, and people will revert back to what they're comfortable with. So here is what we've covered. I'm not going to go over it again. You can read it. We've gone through all of this. I will answer some questions quickly here. We switched from ADPRM to Ceridian Dayforce as our ATS, not your choice, I imagine, and use Avature, but only the CRM module. Cool. There's almost no integration between the two, with Lemlist and Simple Text play nice with both and allow us to automate. Not sure, I've never even heard of Ceridian Dayforce, but again, ping me afterwards, happy to show them to you and make any intros if I can get you any. How do I spell the scheduling tools? X.ai is going to be the one I suggest. Names of the tools, reach out to me. Do you need XAI for scheduling if you have Loxo? I answered that one, sorry. What are my thoughts on Zoho and all their features? Ping me afterwards. I don't use it, so I'll leave it at that for now, but you can ping me afterwards. Would I go over talent mapping again? Is there an automation step for that, or is it manual? Yeah. So almost any tool that you use, I'm going to do it with Seekout because it's the easiest one for me to do. I'm going to do, I don't know, recruiters or talent acquisition and her company. I don't know. Sure, Google, and we'll do that in New York City and run the search. Cool. So for talent mapping, right, I want to see everybody who's got this generic, right, super generic, right? I want to see anybody who could be a recruiter who works at Google and lives in New York City. Check this out. I don't even look at the profile. It's not worth it. I just go through here, current company, current titles, past companies, past titles. It literally gives you the entire map. And from things like past companies, you can go through and run other searches of people who may also be relevant and use each of these insights to build on top of each other. There's other ways to do this as well. That's going to be the main one I think I'm going to stick to for now. Boop, blah, blah, blah. Lean Six Sigma and recruiting. Yes, awesome. Oh, thanks, Christy. Preference between amazing hiring and human predictions depends on your approach to recruiting. If you are more of a sniper, like to send one-off super personalized messages to people, human predictions. If you want to send more in bulk, amazing hiring. If you're hiring overseas, amazing hiring. Yeah. Google Hire is sunsetting. Would I recommend Loxo over other? Yes, that was easy. Thanks for the lob on that, Jessa. The big gorilla, LinkedIn Recruiter, gross, because it's a dumb idea. I haven't mentioned because it's a dumb idea. No, I haven't mentioned LinkedIn Recruiter because I despise them as an organization, and I think that they're deteriorating the recruiting industry. They are dumbing down recruiting, which is allowing the bar to get lower and lower, which allows worse and worse recruiters into our space, which then allows them to do a really crappy job and make all of us look super crappy. So when you go to Google and type in recruiters are, it says a whole bunch of nasty stuff. So I don't care for that piece. I also don't care for the fact that they create a dependency on their system, right? If you use LinkedIn Recruiter, you have to message through LinkedIn Recruiter, and you have to respond through LinkedIn Recruiter, and you have to track through LinkedIn Recruiter, or you have to manually export. I know now they integrate with a couple of ATSs. They're dumbing down and creating LinkedIn zombies, basically, who if you took away LinkedIn Recruiter tomorrow, I imagine more than half the recruiters in the world would literally be incapable of doing their job. That's a problem. I get it. Oh, great business model, sure, for them, but for the industry, it's harmful. Sorry, I have very strong feelings about that. Any suggestions for a smaller city in Canada? Yeah, Mississauga is pretty nice. Check that out. No, I'm kidding. Reach out to me afterwards. I'll go through a few and kind of show you which ones work. So I'm going to harp on this one more time, guys. This is my personal story I always end with. It's not the same one. I end with a personal story. So, and please, if you can, feel free to stick around. We're going to get pretty vulnerable together right here. So I talk a lot about that tools do a job, not your job, and that it's important to understand the place for automation and for tooling and processes versus you being a human and using them. And so being really real with you guys, if you saw my talk at TalentNet last year, you know this, If not, you probably don't. So I am in and have been for years in recovery from addiction. And it's a 12-step program. I was in a terrible place. My marriage was struggling. My family relations were struggling. It was really difficult, right? I found myself constantly going back and doing things that were harmful to me because they were comfortable. I was used to them, right? And so in going through recovery, they give you tools for creating better habits, right? And some of those are, the men's group that you go to. Some are creating activities that are healthy activities, right? For me, that's meditation, that's journaling, that's prayer, and exercise, right? It gets me into therapy, right? Talking to someone, having someone to vent to, right? In our world, that group, that men's group, is our community. Are you actively involved in any of the communities on Facebook or LinkedIn? Are you reaching out and contributing to the community and asking for help and guidance and a mentor? Meditation, prayer, journaling, that's research. Are you researching stuff in our space? Are you learning constantly, not just about cool things that are out there, but about your process and the way you do things? And therapy is a mentor. Do you have a mentor? Do you have somebody that you can go to when you don't want to throw out a question for all of LinkedIn to go to, right? And I didn't. So I had to create these tools as journaling, meditation, a sense of community with my men's group. But guys, having the tools didn't cure me, right? To be clear, not a cure, but it didn't fix the problem, right? It was how I used them, right? I had to go to the meetings and I had to put myself out there to talk to people and learn their story. I have to take time out every day to meditate, which sounds pretty simple, but I have real hardcore ADHD. So sitting still for 10 minutes is literally one of the most difficult things I do every day, right? Journaling. I hate writing, like physically writing. I'm faster on a keyboard, but I know that for me, it helps me. They're uncomfortable things to do, but ultimately they're just tools. So when I'm able to use these tools for myself, I'm able to be healthy. I'm able to be sober and happy and connected with people. And as a result of making use of the tools and not hoping the tools work for me, I have a great relationship with my sister now, right? She's one of my best friends. And even better than that, my wife and I are doing amazingly, better than we ever have before. Why? Because I found tools that do a job and I used them to help. And using tools to help you do a job can get you to a place of happiness. So I hope that helps shed some light and hopefully inspire. And if there's any other questions, I know we're past 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock or noon, depending on where you are. That's my email and my LinkedIn and my Facebook. I will add you on any of them. Just reach out to me, guys. I'm always happy to help. I'll stick around and answer some more questions for probably just another couple of minutes. If my manager only allocates no more than 30 minutes a day to explore other tools to elevate my recruiting, what areas do you recommend a junior recruiter, less than 1 year of experience, start to explore? That's a great question. So if I only had 30 minutes a day, honestly, I'd reach out to people in the industry and try to set up as many conversations for 30 minutes a day as I could. Reach out to people who you respect, reach out to people who you've seen speak or write for Recruiting Daily or write for SourceCon, right? Present at SOSU. Reach out to those people, guys. I promise you, it's not a burden. You're not bothering us. We love doing that. It's why we talk at conferences. It's why we contribute with content. It's not for ego and pride. A little bit, obviously, but it's really, guys, because we want to help. Reach out, set up calls, right? If you reach out to me with a question after this, I'm going to more than likely just say, hey, let's pop on a Zoom call. Let's chat about it, right? Let's get to know each other and see how we can help. Do I offer mentorship for sourcing and coaching? Sure do. Reach out. How about Evernote for journaling? Works on all three of my devices. Joe Weech, I love you. Like as a human, I love you. You are amazing. If anyone on here is looking for someone to head up their people or human resources space, reach out to Joe Weech, Joweech. Guys, she's awesome. Yes, Evernote's great. I try to journal by hand because I don't like doing it, and therefore it forces me to grow a little bit. Any last questions? Favorite scraping tool, Zap Info, because it's automated and easy. Cool. Great. That's about it. And cool. Guys, reach out. I'm here with any other questions that you guys have. What is the tool that displays text while I talk? I have no idea. That's a great question. I should probably look into that. I really, really have no idea. Cool. So guys, thanks for reaching out. Thanks for joining us here today. Again, thank you to Talview for hosting this and allowing us to share this content. Guys, please reach out. Let's create that sense of community together and be a part of something bigger than ourselves. I appreciate all of you, and I hope that you guys stay safe.